Good morning. I want to do two things here. First of all, I want to remind you of the reception following the service today. Back in the Heritage Room, we're going to open up the time capsule. We've got some snacks. Look at the heritage of our pictures back there, so join us. The second is I want to explain what I'm doing up here. We've looked at the History Committee, and one of the things we wanted to do was kind of review how we got to where we're at today, and maybe more importantly, look where we're going from here. Did you know that the average congregation only lasts 90 years? Our congregation is now at 175, and we're looking for the next 90. So we need to work to build that. But how did it begin? The history of our church begins with early German immigration in the 1820s and 30s. Germans, particularly those from the southwest regions of what is now Germany, left their homeland for three key reasons. First, the economic conditions in the region were terrible. Famine following the Napoleonic Wars, the lack of farmland for a growing population, and the economic changes caused by the Industrial Revolution forced many to consider immigration. The second reason was religious stress. The conflicts with Catholicism, challenges of competing Protestant denominations, the decline of religious faith, and the mandates by the princes of what you would worship all contributed to the religious and spiritual stress. And finally, conflicts of liberty. The political ideas expressed by the French and American revolutions and the reactionary policies of those German princes and ruling houses of the area reached a near boiling point, revolutions in 1848. The move to Ohio had to be traumatic. Think of this. You're leaving a region with a history dating back to ancient Rome, with established towns and trading centers, culture, and more, to move to a region that still has heavy forest, is a darn swamp, and is still with Native Americans, and in a region that was settled by people initially who spoke a completely different language. Galion was formed in 1831. By 1840, a founding church that combined Lutheran and Reformed elements, not congregations formally, was built at the corner of Church and Union Street. We in Galion tend to name streets obviously. There was a church and it was a union. There's your street names. This building was the home of three congregations that still serve Galion, though. Ours, Peace Lutheran, and the First, or the English Lutheran, on that. But language differences and theological differences soon found the German elements breaking away and building a new church in 1847. The church shown in the picture is the structure that was built at South Market Street for the combined German Lutheran, now Peace Lutheran, and the Reformed membership. It served both congregations and stands roughly where the current Peace Lutheran Church is at. But 1847 saw something also that was pivotal. 47 individuals banded together to form the Evangelical Reformed Church, our current congregation. Now, evangelical has a meaning that's a little bit different than today. At that time, evangelical meant open and spreading the word of God. Okay? This document was signed in 1847, and we celebrate that today. We also found that not only did those 47 sign it, there were other German people who did speakers that did not sign, but communed with that group. The early ministers, Reverend Krause and Reverend Keller, served both the Reformed and the Lutheran congregations, but again, the tensions led to some divisions. In history, there's always a strong individual that meets the needs of the time, and in 1853, our strong minister came for the first time, a Reverend Max Stern. Stern is a powerful figure, not only for this congregation, for many of the congregations, and for our denominations overall. At least 5 different churches were started by Stern or by ministers trained here in Galion. This dynamic figure led to the construction of a new building on this very site in 1859. I will jokingly say that they are faster in building the building than we are at choosing a minister, but that's neither here nor there. The lot cost a whopping $350 when we bought the lot from the Gill family. At that time, it was a German church, and the goal of that church was to provide comfort and a safety for these newly landed German immigrants. You've got to remember that there was a real reaction against this German onslaught. Remember that 6 million Germans between 1820 and 1880 came to the United States. The German population drove Galion's growth. In 1840, just over 300 people lived here. By 1860, it was 1,960, just under 2,000. And by 1870, it was 3,523. The mostly German and Swiss immigrants did face reactions. 2 weeks ago in the Columbus Dispatch, there was an article that wrote of the conflict between the English and Irish, who spoke English, and these new Germans. A conflict that in Columbus actually ended up in gunfire and death in Columbus. We weren't quite that bad here. But the building they built, what a building. It was a large building that seated nearly 400, a tall steeple, and an imposing structure on Main Street. It was probably, it was the largest church in town and one of the largest brick structures. The only structure that would have been close to its size is the Central Hotel on the square. Now, the structure was interesting in that it was without indoor plumbing or other facilities that we might consider necessary today. The bell that was installed still calls us to worship. The bell, weighing over 1,000 pounds, is still in use today, calling us to worship and marking milestones in the lives of our congregations. It's one of the things that makes Galion unique is the church bells and the carillons that we use on our main street. Now, this building was completed just in time for the most momentous struggle in our nation's history. The American Civil War was a conflict not just between armies, but between local community. Galion had a strong Copperhead or anti-war population, but the Germans, because of that desire for liberty and freedom, sided with the Union and enlisted in droves. The state of Ohio provided over 11 regiments of all German troops. Germans were the largest contingent of the Union Army. The stress in this area had to be incredible. We know that the minister at that time felt that stress and left because of that. And we know of one man of this congregation, at least, Johann Philipp Sickmüller, who was on the rolls as an Anglicized John Sickmüller, died in this tragedy. He died at the camp in West Virginia and was buried there. It's interesting to note that he was not a young man. He was 40 at the time of his death. He served as an adult to fight for a union on that. This is his gravestone in that West Virginia ceremony. And for those of us who are of Sickmüller or other family, I believe, if I've got the genealogy correct, he is my great-great-great-uncle on that. There was also a conflict in the church about language. Now, think about this at the time. And right after the Civil War, the Galion City school system is organized, and it teaches only in English. So if you were the Deutsch but went to school, you had a problem. And there was a fight within the church itself. While many of the older members of our congregation said that they would rather hear a pig grunt than hear a sermon in English, there was a generation struggle. In 1867, there was actually a split in our congregation that formed because of the English speakers. They left until 1875. Most came back to the mother church, but some stayed away. But the congregation grew by not only welcoming the Germans who continued to come to Galion or other families that were here, but much else was happening in Galion that impacted not only our community and the county around us, but also our denomination. The publishing arm of the Reformed Church began in Galion in 1858. It's still in existence. We started it. Overseas missions. If you look over here, 1869, the Frauenmissionverein celebrated foreign missions. 1869 on that. By the turn of the century, Galion had grown to 7,282 members. It was the 39th largest city in the state of Ohio. Our membership, because of that phenomenal growth, was approaching 700 members. Now, if you count the seats, we can't fit 700 in here right now, even today. We had incorporated and changed our name officially to the First Reformed Church of Galion, eliminating the German by that time in 1908, I mean. And we were slated to host a conference of the church here in Galion when the ladies of the Dorcas Society felt that there was a need for a new and larger organ. But consistory felt there might be a better idea to replace that old brick church, which wasn't that old, with a new, larger, and modern structure. So next week, come hear what we did. Thank you.